African countries are just slightly over 60 years since they regained their independence. Take Nigeria, for example, with over 500 ethnic groups created within an artificial boundary. They have had their problems, they have had their hiccups, but the nation is still alive and well. The difficulties notwithstanding. Take Uganda, for example. You've had your difficulties, you've had your trials and tribulations, but the nation is still alive and well. Tanzania, with over 136 ethnic groups, the nation is still alive and well. There is a sense in which, in the face of our difficulties, we have succeeded in managing those difficulties, however painful it has been. But look at Europe, the pontificating Europe. They cannot handle diversity. They cannot. And it's important to remind ourselves this, if only to energize ourselves. Europeans have had to fight two major tribal wars. They called them world wars. They were tribal wars. The European tribes were at war with each other in 1914. They may have recruited a few Africans and a few other people, and then they call it World War. Then they had another major tribal war in 1939 through to 1945. They didn't call them tribal wars, they called them world wars. And I want you to look at Europe and the purity of their nation. If you go to Sweden, the nation is almost 90% composed of the Swedes, with a small lapsed population, and for that small population, they even have a separate parliament for them. That is how they handle it. You go to Finland, 90% of Finland are the Finns, with small Swedish population. You go to the Netherlands, the same. You go to England, or the Great Britain, whether it's great or not, I do not know. But it's the Great Britain. Even there, if you talk to the Scots, they have something to say about the English. If you talk to the Irish, they have something to say. If you talk to the Welsh, they have something to say. Go to Spain, where there are a few more tribes, they had a civil war. Go to Italy, largely the Italians. And you walk across to Eastern Europe. Yugoslavia was united as one nation under Joseph Broz Tito. Did they not produce many countries during our lifetime? The Soviet Union has given birth to many countries. They have gone into ethnic purity. Africa remains the only continent on earth that somehow, having had artificial boundaries imposed on her, saying that we will retain those boundaries and make the best of it. And one need only go to the pronouncements in 1963, the pronouncements of Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Kambarage Nyerere on the inviolability of the boundaries, repeated again in 1964 in Cairo, in Egypt, that if we choose to redraw these boundaries, Africa will be perpetually at conflict, and therefore heavens have given us a lemon. Let us not ask for an orange. Let us make a lemonade unto ourselves. And we are making the lemonade. So today, to go back to our subject, in 1989, the Soviet Union collapses. So the world is no longer bipolar. The world is unipolar. The conceptual West has won the day. So Africa must now begin to identify how to behave. We are not ready. We are told that we must democratize. And democratization means that we must have new constitutions. So Uganda has a constitution in 1995. So Ethiopia has a constitution in 1984. So Malawi has a constitution. So Nigeria has a constitution in 1979. Ghana has a new constitution. Guinea-Bissau has a new constitution. The former Portuguese colonies have now regained their independence, whether it's Cape Verde or Angola or Mozambique. so that the former French colonies also have new constitution. But remember that the constitution that they are replacing, and Africa is the only continent where our constitutions prior to then were referred to, if you are colonized by the English, our constitutions were referred to as the Westminster model, not the Kampala model, Westminster model. The French constitutions were referred to as the Gaullist model after the 1958 pronouncement of Charles de Gaulle of France. That is where we find ourselves. In 1989, we are now told that we must have constitutions which are democratic. So we all have constitutions, and one of the pillars of democracy is that we must have multi-party politics. That is the touchstone. That is the litmus test of what a democracy is, as seen from the eyes of the conceptual West. Do we have a choice in the matter? No, we don't have a choice in the matter. We may pretend to have a choice, but we have no choice. Because Big Brother, World Bank, and IMF are breathing down us and telling us, you either do this or we do you. So they come in the 1980s with structural adjustment, and we do as they want. Here in Uganda, I hear President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni arguing ever so eloquently that Uganda, given our history, can only survive on the basis of a no-party system. But I hear the West telling him equally eloquently and a little bit more forcefully that we do not agree with you. We do not agree with you, and your safety not only requires but demands that you must reintroduce multi-party politics. So Yoweri Kaguta Museveni concedes. And he's not the only one who is conceding. Everywhere we are conceding. Ultimately, all the countries now have plural party politics. And that is where the commercialization of politics begins. That is where money enters into the political arena. That is where we begin to eliminate ideas from politics, and we now ask ourselves, who is the leader? And now that is the time when people get into political office for the purpose of feathering their nests, because the electoral process becomes an expensive process, and that is where we begin to lose our direction. So as I speak today, one of the greatest qualifications in African politics is the size of your pocket. You know, in 1995, the then